Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday night, May 23rd at 7 p.m. We have a slightly different order to our meeting tonight. We will be having a public hearing on the Community Development Block Program, and that will be followed by 3 committee meetings. And then we will move into a special session for the reading of some of our ordinances. So it will be slightly different, and then that special session will have the readings, but we will not have our communications and reports from other elected officials as we often do in our regular sessions. And we will also not have the opportunity for citizens to speak on items not on the agenda. So those are 2 ways in which the council meeting is different tonight. We will proceed then with the public hearing for the Community Development Block Program. This is sometimes referred to as the CDBG program. And I believe City Administration and Councilmember Butler have some information about that. Or I can also give some background information. This is a federally funded program that provides project monies for improvements, usually in infrastructure, that benefit wide parts of the community. And they are designated for low and moderate income areas in our neighborhoods, and they can, in fact, support activities like economic development projects, street, water, drainage, sanitary and sewer improvements, park acquisition, demolition of unsafe structures, rehabilitation of housing and neighborhood facilities. And this is closely aligned with what we might also have heard of our CHIP program, our community housing improvement projects, where we do renovations and rehabilitations for individual structures. But these are more oriented towards the wider community. And in our earlier conversations, I believe there were several projects that the administration mentioned as possible projects. Our point in having the public hearing tonight is to see if there is input from anybody else in the audience or any additional comments from council members that they may have heard from citizens about possible projects, or any comments from city administration.
I have a couple of comments about the possible projects, if that's what you're alluding to. As was mentioned before, 3 projects that have come up. And these, again, came through the city engineer, Andy Stone, Engineering and Public Works, but these are needed. First off, as an option, is West Union Sidewalk Extension, and that's from Harold down to Hocking, Edina Bikeway, which would be sidewalk improvements in an area that has, in some cases, don't have sidewalks, so we'll be improving the walkability of that area. Jefferson Avenue repaving as another possible, and then supplementing work that's needed to be done up at the Kimes Reservoir, which is on the south side of the city. But as President Nisley indicated, other options for improvements is what this public hearing is all about.
Any other comments from or questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Pappy.
So we cannot apply for all 3. We can only apply for 1?
Well,
because of the funding stream and the amount?
Yeah, there's, I believe, $75,000 in this. So this, even then, I don't think you could stretch it far enough to do all 3 projects. Certainly not for the Kimes Reservoir. That's a big project, and this would be helpful in that area, but to a very small degree, as opposed to, as was mentioned, the sidewalk improvement on West Union, where we have stretches of that street, that roadway, where there's no sidewalks at all.
And a lot of people do traverse there.
There is.
Well, there's a pretty well-worn path through the grass where people walk.
There is. It's worth it mentioning that there's businesses through that, down that corridor as well, that it would certainly enhance walkability to a hotel and some other businesses throughout that area.
And traditionally, we don't assess property owners when there's no existing sidewalk. It's just for repair of existing sidewalk.
So Director Stone, does he have a 1, 2, or 3, or these are just what has bubbled up to the surface for him to go for.
They're bubbling up to the surface, but as he had indicated earlier, that West Union would be at the top, Jefferson, and then the Reservoir being the third on his list. And I know that being third on the list, just because that is a much bigger project. So.
And that was my question about the Kimes, because I know that we have on our infrastructure tours looked at that Kimes Reservoir, which governs a lot of the south side of town. And so, and I don't want to stray too far away from that, but I'm thinking if it was a third potential project, it would get mixed in, as we often do, with then funding packages from other sources to try and come up with the entire renovation cost. Is that true? And
Likely, but that is not on his list for full 2017 repair, and this is something that could be accomplished within. When we say 75,000, that's most of the totality, but there's also administrative money and fair housing money that comes out of that, so it winds up being closer to $69,000 in funding.
Okay. And Councilmember Katsas.
What are the issues on Jefferson Avenue, Jefferson Street?
It's repaving.
And is that Jefferson? Is that Jeff Hill? Is that where are you talking about? Please.
Off of West Union, Jefferson. Some people refer to it as an alley.
Okay.
It's actually.
Is it just past the fairgrounds? Okay.
And that is an LMI area, low and moderate income, so the funds would be appropriately used.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council members, and any comments from the audience about these possible project ideas? Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll consider the public hearing closed at 7:08 p.m. And we'll move into our Planning and Development Committee, chaired by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Madam President. First on the list is a proposed lot split on the corner of East State and Hudson. Planning Commission has put forward their recommendations to allow a lot split at this particular lot, and it would need two variances because of setback requirements. It is in the core part of our neighborhoods, so the lots to begin with are quite small. One of the variances would be a 2-foot setback where normally is a 10 to 15-foot setback. That would be on East State Street. And the other one would be a setback of 7 feet on Hudson Avenue, which is usually 10 feet. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
So I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember
Is this
Pappy.
a business? That's a business lot? Is this a homeowner's lot?
For Hudson?
Yeah.
It is. This is Avalanche Pizza's building, and then there's a automotive repair shop on
Yes.
that actually has the address of Hudson.
Okay.
That is closed, the repair shop.
So do we know what the plans are?
They want a lot split.
We know that Avalanche wants to purchase their property, and in order to accomplish that, the lot split separation has to occur. The owner is ready to do that.
So, questions? Normally, we don't necessarily ask what the ultimate purpose is, as long as it's within the zoning code and such, because we know that sometimes business decisions fall through. So I will bring that up in special session, I noticed. The second agenda item is granting 10-year revocable licenses to Time Warner Cable for placement of power supply cabinets, big silver things, on the city right-of-way. These are for 10-year, and there is a list of properties that will be granted through this one revocable license, and it's quite an extensive list. So. And it's straightforward. All the various departments have signed off. So. That's pretty straightforward.
Question or statement. Is the reason that Time Warner is requesting this is because the AEP will no longer allow them on their poles? Is that what's going on?
Are these new boxes?
We know they're switching to cabinets, and the city engineer has reviewed the language, and he feels that this is adequate language on
Okay,
behalf of the city.
there are no cabinets now. Okay, what we see out there driving through the neighborhoods are pedestals for usually the electrical outlets and those cable providers who have them buried, and they're not on the lines. So what we're seeing here is, what, 20 cabinets?
Probably 40.
All right,
About 40.
40, okay.
So are these the size of the lights at signals, where we have the signal boxes? Is that the size of a box that we're discussing here? Does anybody have any idea?
I don't know that it's the size of a traffic control box that you're referring to, which is about the size of a stainless steel refrigerator, or any refrigerator for that matter. That I don't know. I don't know. I have no answer in terms of its size.
Are we getting compensation for it, city?
We are not. It's not built into the code at this point in time. We also do not receive compensation from AEP.
Well.
We do not receive compensation from Horizon,
What are those, Michelle?
Frontier.
I see. Well, there could always be a first time.
Fairly large. I don't know if the camera would like to take a picture of this.
You do have subscribers all over the city, though, who subscribe to that service.
Yeah, I'm one of them,
Okay.
which I asked, what's the point?
Okay, thank you. So there would be about 40 of these located around the city.
I think that
Thank you.
normally a right-of-way,
Corruption.
having a revocable license has never been something that we've charged, except for in very limited.
I'm just thinking out of the box. Forgive me, sorry.
Right. But I think that
Erase.
if that
Take
was
it all
the
back.
case, we would have to go through a contract negotiation with them. And it wouldn't be part of the right-of-way license.
And perhaps there's time to find out additional information. I understand what you're saying. There's the one issue that it's a revocable license. There's also an interesting article in the latest Cities and Villages, and it talks about installations in municipal right-of-way. And it does have some very interesting information that, it's subject to municipal authority to control the right-of-way, but both Ohio law and federal law may limit the municipal authority in certain respects. And so this is written by a lawyer, and I don't understand all of it, but it does give, in the case of new poles or new boxes, it does give a longer negotiation period. The municipality, for existing ones, needs to respond within 60 days. But if it's a new box, as I understand this article, it gives the city or municipality 150 days review process. So if these are new ones, we may have a little bit longer to take a look at it. So thank you for mentioning it.
And we can either, it's on for first reading tonight, but we can read it first and then contact Time Warner and look at this issue and ask our law director for input on what the ORC can actually allow us to do. So, okay. And the third agenda item, Kent Butler is going to
Thank you.
talk about it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fall. I spoke earlier today with our Public Works engineer, Andy Stone, and he informed me of a potential land swap or land exchange, and this is regarding our 80-acre field where we spread our biosolids for our sludge. My understanding from the Public Works Director is that, according to the farmers, the field is now too rich, and we can't continue to adequately place the biosolids on that particular field. It's wise for us to consider using other fields, is my understanding, and there's a potential here for a swap to acquire a larger 140-acre tract of land that would be in the floodway, so it's not really buildable. So this is a good use of that land, and we would then in turn give up 24 acres. This is a process or negotiation discussion that's been taking place with a local entrepreneur for maybe the last 3 to 6 months, is my understanding, and this seems to be a potential equitable swap. If we don't move forward with working with acquiring other land, then we might have to continue to send some of this sludge to the landfill. To me, the landfill is not a wise option when we can safely spread this and farmers can use this to grow crops or products that are not for human consumption. The mayor's office might have more on this as well.
No, I think Member Butler, you summed it up really well in that, again, the city has been doing ground application for a number of years, and if you were to look at the aerial photograph of the area, the 80 acres that we currently ground apply, it is very rich, and we have to stay within EPA guidelines in terms of that, where we are applying it. The other option is, you just mentioned, is that we would, bulk press dry the sludge and haul it to the landfill, which is very expensive to do. In light of this would be a swapping of property or an exchange of property to where the city would receive essentially 5 times the farmable property to continue to produce or apply the land application, which really gives us time to rotate across these fields to where if one becomes too rich, then we can almost like crop rotation on a farm. We just sit there and go, the next 80 acres down the road, and we sit there and apply there, and it's just it'll really extend the amount of time that we can apply. And this has been looked at by the law director. It's been through all the proper channels to make sure that this is, one, something that can be done, and two, that the trade value between the property owners and the city of Athens, that it's an equitable trade and much needed. This in terms of easements, which was an issue that we were concerned about, being able to access the property that we will retain off of US Route 50, that the easement would be there to be able to still ground apply in our original property, but also easements to where we can get onto the other properties to apply there as well. So this is a good solution for the long run. It's cost effective, and again, it falls within the EPA guidelines. It always has.
And all of this property that's being discussed is outside of the city limits, but within 3 miles of our planning zone.
So my question is, what is the advantage of this landholder to do this?
Buildable property, developable property.
So he gains developable property.
He would gain 24 acres, which is developable because it is not in the floodways. That's correct.
Correct, and it's also Route 50 frontage. It fronts, and it's just down from where there's other businesses already along that area. So it's fitting, property-wise. Currently, it's agriculture, but so is the other 200 and some acres behind it. So.
And to clarify, it would be accessed off the existing access road that's already in place there, that's parallel to 50.
Right.
We're talking about Canaanville is where
Yes.
we're at. I have one other comment.
Sure, Councilmember Patrick and then Councilmember Cochran.
we've been hearing a lot about the northern part of the state and what's happening with the algae blooms and those kinds of things. And I know I recently read an article where they're working up there with the farmers to transition to other forms of fertilizer or whatever. And I'm just assuming with the EPA regulations that we're meeting all the proper, because we are right by the river. And I don't know, since it is sort of agriculture, but I just wanted to make sure that that's in the discussion, because there seems to be more guidelines, at least in that part of the state, as to how to deal with agricultural land near waterways.
I think one of the things they were looking at is application of non-human bio sludge fertilizer applications, and actually looking at timing of it because of the winter. And so I think it falls under different EPA guidelines of application because it is human. It's from a waste. So.
Yeah, there's a big difference between agricultural livestock runoff and what is treated wastewater treatment plant sludge for ground application. It's monitored. The soils are sampled. Everything falls within EPA guidelines for how the current 80 acres is handled and has been handled. It's just, again, when you reach that point in which the soil is too rich and you can't apply anymore, the city, as you guys know, because you appropriate the funding for us to have to switch gears and start hauling that off to the landfill, which tipping fees, and in particular with sludge, it's expensive, and it's dried sludge. I mean, it's belt pressed waste that ends up going into the Athens Hawking landfill.
And soil sampling was done on the
Yep.
transfer, the potential transfer of land. So.
There's timber too. There's a riparian section all along the river. So there's already natural mitigation that's somewhat involved in anything seeping from the soils into the river.
Councilmember Cochran.
Can you perhaps provide us with a little explanation of this map, since the legend just indicates that the shaded area is the city of Athens. That's what we're going to transfer to JBH Investments, and then the rest of this property is being transferred to the city. Is that correct? Because the legend just indicates no pattern. You
Sure.
see
On
where
your
I'm
map.
confused here?
Yeah, let me help you. On the map itself, you'll notice there is a gray shaded area that is in your upper left-hand corner of the map itself. And then there's also the kind of dark green shaded area with the striping running
Right.
through it. That is our current property, that whole area. That's the 80 acres. The one that has the hexagons in it,
Yes.
that is the property that we would be in receipt of. Where you see the property with the little plus signs in it, that is also held by JBH Investments, but that is not part of this
Okay.
land swap. It's just that you see in the hexagon area on your map.
Thank you.
And that's why we need the right-of-way, because it's not connected.
Correct.
Well, one of the things too that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Member Katsas.
So we currently access our property from that US 50 interchange, or not interchange, but right.
Through that frontage road.
Okay.
There's a frontage road that runs along there.
Okay.
That you exit 50 onto the frontage road, and then you hang a right and go all the way back to our property.
Got it.
Something that was mentioned in my conversation with Public Works Director Andy Stone was that he doesn't believe that we own the mineral rights currently on the 80 acres, and that it's unlikely that we would be able to then acquire mineral rights under the new property as well.
That is
during the swap.
That's correct. We don't own the mineral rights to our 80 acres. Just surface ground application, surface application.
Sure. Thank you. And I just wanted to offer that for part of this transparency discussion. Any more comments or thoughts?
Other than who owns the mineral rights?
Pardon me?
Other than who owns the mineral rights?
It would be,
JBH or somebody else?
We can find out, but as the mayor stated, we don't own currently the rights, mineral rights on the property that we
That we
already
own.
What we're seeking is being able to proceed and going ahead and having the title search and all the documents prepared for actual acceptance.
to do a swap. Correct.
Exchange.
Exchange.
Will it come back to council one more time after you find out all this information, or will it just go forward?
Council would have to accept this exchange. You have technically, probably, I'm looking at Debbie, but there may be a disposal of property or exchange, so there's. So,
Thank you.
okay.
If that covers it.
All right. And
I have
any
no
mis-
miscellaneous.
Are there any
Do you have any
miscellaneous
more?
items under planning and development in the city?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to transportation. Councilmember Pappy is the chair.
Thank you. Our first item is more of a, sorry, let me get my agenda back up here. Is a change in the funding stream. So what it is that we're doing is originally let me see if we're in the right section. Okay. This is for an agreement. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I apologize. My computer is not.
You have a paper copy too.
I don't have a paper
Michelle,
copy.
here's a paper copy. It's
Thank
on the
you.
backup. That helps.
So the LPA agreement for the ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, the East State Street US 33 interchange upgrade. We've discussed this several times, but what we need to do is amend 816, which is a prior ordinance, in terms of our funding streams and where the money's coming out of. It's the same amount of money, we're just transitioning it from two different funds. So I'll let the mayor discuss why we're doing that.
Well, to put it quite simply, is that within the one funding stream, the money is accrued throughout the year. Money comes in slowly, and that there is money already in the other account line, and so it's just using what's there in real dollars rather than squeezing money that just isn't there.
So just to remind council, this is for the design and engineering to move forward with those plans, and so that's what this money is for.
And the two different accounts are all within the street department accounts. So it's where the money exists, the cash actually exists in one fund at this point. So is part of it like street rehab or streets or?
One of them is 226, which is the wheel tax fund, and the other
And the wheel tax is the fund that has the
Street
money in
rehab,
it.
yeah.
That's the healthy fund, the wheel tax.
the wheel tax, because that's there, and then the street rehab fund, which is 572.
Okay.
So there's actually two separate ordinances related to this, and one is for the entering into the LPA agreement, the other one to reflect where the funding's coming from.
Okay.
Any questions, council? Okay. Move forward. Our next item is the McKinley Design Engineering. We've been discussing this now for a month or so. Just to update, the McKinley Avenue is as you come off of onto Stimson Avenue off of the highway, and it's there by Mill Street Apartments. We are looking to fund a new and improved road there with a roundabout. and that will go back into our manufacturing zone. And Ohio University is involved with this, as well as ODOT, as well as Jobs Ohio as a funding source as well, due to the fact that the Athens machine and mold is going to be upgrading that facility and bringing jobs to Athens. So that is the background. So we need this fund line so that we can begin the design and build in 2017. Mayor?
If you mentioned this, I didn't hear it, but Ohio University is also significantly contributing to the funding of this, as they have labeled this project the McKinley Gateway Project moving forward, which it is a gateway into the east side of the university. So, and yes, you're right, and thank you for pointing out that this is a project that has stitched together some very interesting funding, from Jobs Ohio to ODOT to ARC is the other one, which has come forward with $300,000 to go into this project as well. So
Appalachian Regional Commission.
yes, which is specific to the Appalachian region. So this is
It's a big project, and it'll be a big improvement
Much needed.
for our city. Member Costas, did you have a?
Yeah, I do. We won't officially know till the Board of Trustees for OU meets that that they're on board. Is that correct?
Pardon me?
The Board of Trustees has to meet in June.
That's correct.
That's correct for OU. So,
But it's gone through all of OU's, Ohio University here in Athens channels, through, and it's going forward. It'll go forward to Board of Trustees in June, beginning of June.
Member Pappy?
Okay.
Councilmember Cochran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a clarifying question about the physical layout of the existing street. Since Ohio University did construct the South Green Loop, is that what it's called?
Yes.
And the current access road that now opens onto Stimson Avenue, will that go away when this new McKinley extension is constructed, or will we have two parallel access roads? Do you know what I'm talking about? Right next to the Mill Street Apartments, Mill Street Village?
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's through design. They're going to figure out the layout of this. The current plan is to put a new roadway over what's the CSX, the former CSX rail bed that goes through there. And it is a 100-foot wide easement, which is probably one of the largest in the city in terms of being able to put this in, which gives a lot of room to put this road down. And so it'll be in design, whether that
So we don't know for
goes
sure what
away.
that will look like. I guess that was a question that came up to me during our infrastructure tour, and I didn't get a chance at that point to ask, just of what that would look like, because it seems like it would be complicated to have, you don't want 2 points dumping out onto Stimson Avenue there.
We agree. I mean, I'm confident that
And that'll
during
be ironed out
design
in the
that
design.
we're not going to allow a conflict right when we're repairing, an area
Right.
and improving it.
It seems to me that would be an access road for within that apartment complex, but, we don't know yet, but they still will need something there to connect from the front to the back of their complex.
Yep.
So I don't see it going away entirely. It's whether or not it has access to Stimson Avenue or it has access to the city street in the rear, which is Mill Street.
Yeah, I cannot imagine that this is going to be a curb cut into a roundabout.
Right.
As I've seen the plans, it has Stimson Avenue running through the roundabout with McKinley, and that's it. Now whether there's a curb cut onto the new McKinley, on McKinley itself.
Maybe. Member Costa.
yes, I'm sorry. Excuse me. So since this is OU's property, I assume they're the ones leading the design.
We are.
You okay? So Andy Stone is okay.
We have some other models where we've done this in the past. Jeff Hill, East Union was one, the Oxbow Bridge, and So even though they may have components in that, they would like the city to be in charge of the project, as it were.
Okay, that's good.
So there's a possibility we might be able to see a boulevard with a large grass swatch in the middle between the two in and out points, perhaps, or just because it's such a wide space, there's a lot of opportunity there to beautify the space.
I don't know that there would be an island in the middle, but it certainly gives a lot of opportunity for some interesting green space on both sides of McKinley when
Sure.
McKinley goes in.
Sidewalks.
To include sidewalks, bike lanes. Again, I'm just paraphrasing from what the city engineer said. He goes, it's not every day that you get landed in your lap something that's 100 feet wide to sit and plan around. Not play around, plan around.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, council? Okay. We'll move on to the JPAC Barbecue Street Fair road closures. This is an event that has been occurring in the fall to welcome the community and students together and to have a meet and greet with our joint police force, Ohio University, and APD. So there are some new developments, though. This year they would like to do it differently than it has been done. And I think I'll let Service Safety Director just speak to that and share where this is changing or why they want to do it differently. It used to be done in front of Baker we've done it, was that the third year this year or second year? Second year. So this would be the third year.
Well, this comes from the chair of JPAC, which is Ron Lucas right now, and the rest of the committee. I was not in attendance, but they would like to make this more of a Celebrate Athens festival. As they explained to us at staff today, they would like to have a safety cruise-in, meaning bring old fire trucks, old police cars, and tie that in, and they would like to get more community engagement. They feel like when it's down in Baker, that becomes, that's just on OU and that area. But if we bring this down, it would be during the day. I recognize some members of AUBA are here today. It's my understanding it was talked about at AUBA and met with support for Saturday, September 10th. I believe till 4 p.m., 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
11 to 4 p.m. on Court Street between Union and State and from Washington. To the parking garage, so that little half part of the block.
I did ask about can it be fit in on one block, but based on what they're actually want to make it a county reach out and invite the volunteer fire departments, the other police departments, and just have more community engagement.
Yes, they talked about Big Brothers Big Sisters, off-campus housing, survivor advocacy, Red Cross, Rotary, Kiwanis, student organizations, and local music and a public safety cruise in. So, any comments on council? We'd be closing the street yet once again on Court Street. It apparently has gone through AUBA.
That's my understanding, but I can reach back out. I do not believe there's an ordinance up tonight because there was going to be discussion. We wanted to leave it open for discussion.
So, council members, now is our time to ask questions.
I think
Member
my
Cochran.
only question at this point would be, would the increased activity involve any increased costs for the city? I know, mainly we're paying for food and some entertainment, and probably a lot of the community organizations would be participating without any cost, but just, if it's a bigger event, is this going to be costing the city any more in funding this year?
I can share with you, having been involved with the JPAC barbecue since its inception, is that the barbecue, we did incur costs, and in particular, both our police department as well as the Ohio University Police Department incurred that cost for the food. But this would have vendors within the prescribed area with the intent that they're not, the police department's not shouldering all the costs for foods. If someone wants to buy food, they can buy food from the vendors that are there. So it's taking it to a different approach. It's taking it to a street event level as opposed to something that it wasn't. It was expensive. It wasn't that expensive. It was, if my memory serves me correctly, I think that split cost between Ohio University and Athens Police Department was about $3,000 a piece for food that they were serving everyone who came. There was no cost, but this changes that model to where now it's taking that expense burden off of the police departments, and you want food, come and purchase food. So that'll be different.
Member Fall.
At the inception of this particular event, it was kind of meant to be a mixer between students and the various public service and safety entities. And it now sounds like that's kind of being, that's not the central focus now. And I wonder if the students of all types and many community members love free food, and whether we're getting away from having this mixer of the different communities, the students and the the police and fire, uptown people, and having that mixer, whether it's going to serve that same goal, or whether now it has a different goal.
No, the goal is the same. The goal is to get to, be in an event where you're interacting with our, not just the police departments, but now it'll be with fire, it'll be with EMS, it'll be across the county. As you remember, in the past years, it was almost exclusively law enforcement, where we had State Highway Patrol, we had the Sheriff's Office, we had OU Police Department, Athens Police Department. I might be missing somebody in that mix, but that was how it was. And so, no, the intent is to continue to do the same. The dialogue has always been great. I do understand your concern that if you're not giving things away, would they come? But I think that it was so positive in the past 2 years that we'll see how this rolls this coming year, and then maybe make some adjustments in the year after we evaluate how it went.
Member Nicely.
From having been at one of the earlier JPAC conversations, I think the interest is in having it be more of an event than the police officers serving up a hamburger, that there's more of a chance for, I guess, a longer extended period of conversation and discussion. So that's the hope with that.
I would just add one more comment about another 2 blocks being closed for businesses on a Saturday. I'll just throw that out there because we will be closing it for most of the day. So I know that AUBA does not represent everybody, but it is the body that most people go to for these type of put the information forward. That is the organized body to do that at. But, I do say that again because, I don't know, we can count up how many times our downtown Court Street is closed, and it's quite a lot anymore. So I'm just saying that, not because any businesses necessarily, because this is just coming out for the first time, but we may be hearing more. Member McGee?
I'm sorry, the street
Costa.
closure, what are the blocks again?
It is Union to State, 2 blocks, 2 full blocks.
And you got 2 responses on either side.
Member McGee?
I'm just curious whether there are any university events happening at that time that might conflict with it. Have you checked on that?
We checked the football schedule. That was probably the biggest thing, and it's an away game that day. In terms of other events at OU, I didn't go completely through their calendar, or maybe JPAC did. I'm not sure. Good question.
Member Butler?
Thank you. Similar to what Councilmember Pappy stated, I just definitely encourage those of you out there in TV world that are business owners to come see us or write us or email us if you have concerns about the closing. We need to hear from community members, obviously, if this is an issue. I see this as also a positive because we're engaging other community members throughout the city and the county to come visit Athens and be a part of this event. So I see we're also inviting people into our community. Uptown will still be accessible, it just won't be through that main thoroughfare. So obviously the parking garage will still be accessible, correct?
Yeah.
So there will be parking available, and it is on a weekend. But I echo similar to what Councilmember Pappy said. We have heard concerns before in the past, and it can be a concern or an issue for some business owners or people accessing uptown. But if we don't hear from you, then we don't know that it's an issue for you. But I support this. I've seen other efforts in other communities for outreach with their police and fire departments. I've seen softball games in which the police department plays against the fire department, and it's wildly successful and fun and exciting, and people come from all over to watch it. It helps that they're dressed in drag, but again, it can be a way for the community to have outreach and connections with our officials there. So I think this is beneficial to create that and continue that dialogue.
Well, we have experience in this community for many years with Kid Fest, which
Right.
is an excellent event that brings in people from all over the county and all over with different booths and different things. So even though it's for a younger population, I think there is a model that we have in terms of encouraging and doing fun things and interesting things to pull us together, which the mission is to obviously get these groups to mingle. Okay.
You know, in terms of street closings in and of themselves, I mean, I'm certainly open to exploring a lot of options, much like we did when we kind of redesignated the space for the International Street Fest this year. It's, you know, I agree with everything that everyone's saying, because I think that we do need to kind of spread things around a little bit so it's not so court-centric, but we'll see how this goes.
So I guess that we'll just take that information back to the group who's discussing this and brainstorm on that some more. Do we have anyone here to speak on this matter?
It's an opportunity if you'd like.
No? All right. Okay. Moving on. Paper. All right. Okay. Exciting conversation. Athens Bikeway Spur Phase 3 and the Richland pedestrian improvements. So later tonight in our special session, we will be discussing this a little for an ordinance. But in terms of what this is we all are aware of the Northwest Athens Bikeway Spur, correct, on council. Everyone knows where that is. So this is Phase 3 that would connect across Armitage Road up into the University Estates development. So it's the final bikeway spur for that Athens neighborhood on that side of town. So Phase 3, meaning the first phase was from State Street Park across the river, and then the second phase has been down through the wetlands and the riparian to Armitage Road, and now the third phase would be that last link up into University Estates Boulevard. So what we are seeking is to submit an application, enter into an agreement with ODOT for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant. Obviously, we want to seek a grant for the Northwest Athens Bikeway Spur. The second phase of this ordinance is the, I don't know, is that a second ordinance? Yes. So let's one at a time. So any questions on Northwest Bikeway Spur? Pete? Member Costa?
Thank you. Grant deadline, do we know what the grant deadline is for this?
Administration, grant deadline?
It's already been submitted, so we need to suspend this particular ordinance tonight to get it through.
And so when was has the deadline already passed? Do we know when we might find out when these grants are awarded?
I don't know when the deadline was on that.
I'm a little confused. That's why I'm sorry. I'm a little confused. What happens under these transportation alternatives if you have to submit a letter of intent? And that letter of intent was accepted for both of these projects, so they said, now submit your application. They've submitted that. It's just been a while, and Andy said, but we need legislation to accompany that.
So we have talked about this off and on for quite a few months. And as you said, the letter of intent was accepted. So now we need to come back with the idea that we were not, as a city, going to try to shoulder the entire cost of the spur, the third phase. So I think Director Stone appropriately put in a letter of intent. Now they've said come back and send us an application for this. So that's kind of how that works out. And so that's what we would like to do, and we do need to suspend it tonight.
And if I may offer just a bit of history, I think when President Nisley was chair of this particular committee, I think we were privy to this plan or idea of connecting with University Estates. So I think this isn't necessarily new, but it's new to some ears here.
Or procedure.
Yeah.
Procedural.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. The second piece is the improvements that many may be noticing in the community that are occurring on Richland Avenue at the moment. And one of the other pieces is to submit an application to the Transportation Alternatives Programs to make upgrades on Richland Avenue, specifically for a median boulevard, however you would like to say it, but a median there nearest Bobcat Lane and also down into the pedestrian crosswalk. No?
No.
Okay.
That's currently underway with the Between the Bridges project. That's separate. No, this is, again, another alternatives.
Okay, you'll have to help.
This is for the not a tunnel. This is the pedestrian walkway that would go underneath a raised Richland Avenue project so that we can get students safely across from West Green to Baker Center and vice versa. So
Thank you for that, because I didn't know if that was, so the median is already going to happen.
correct.
Okay. So it is for the pedestrian way below the street. And thanks for bringing that up again tonight, because I sat there waiting for somebody to cross there today and almost saw someone get hit because the driver was insistent on going through. They didn't want to wait any longer. And I was very concerned for the pedestrian who was crossing, because I wasn't clear what that driver was going to do. They were in a hurry, I guess. So I was very nervous for that pedestrian as I witnessed that interaction.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, this is a project, something needed to be done along this stretch. I was in my office during both events when individuals were hit, one seriously and the other luckily not as serious. But yeah, this is a project that will allow us to kind of scope out what could be done down in that area to mitigate the congestion of foot traffic, but also what ends up becoming the congestion of vehicular piling up, backing up onto Richland Avenue, literally on the hour and 20 minutes in that area.
The other thing I would mention to all of council and the community is on the Ohio University master plan, there is a section, just for an idea of what something might look like, there is a section there that discusses what something might be constructed in that plan. So you could go to that URL and look that up as well, because there is a image there that...
Do you remember which university that was? We could Google it, too.
There were several ideas given, but they also had a composite of one that would possibly work for the Richland Avenue area. So there are places to look. I know James Madison had one.
Yeah, JMU.
I went to school there, so it, you know. And that goes under an interstate. One of them goes under an interstate. So anyways, that's what this is. Any other questions on this? I think those of us who've been on council for a while have heard numerous concerns regarding the Richland Avenue pedestrian issues.
And this is just a grant to kind of scope it, and this isn't to try to design or build. Is this it is, okay, all right.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application to enter into agreement with ODOT for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant for the Richland pedestrian improvements. Generally, these grants are 80-20.
In terms of the split,
Yes.
60-40.
It's 60-40. And I'm just going to venture a statement here that this might be one of those situations where we have some type of agreement with the university as well, in terms of the 40% split. Maybe.
It could be explored. This would also need to be suspended. Just because the applications are, again, the letter of intent was received and accepted, and now just need to suspend so that we're all in alignment with the application having been submitted.
All right. Member Cox?
I'll just throw in my 2 cents here and say I'm happy to see this project moving forward for the sake of our pedestrians and our motorists, because everybody experiences that interchange as a pedestrian or as a motorist frequently during your tenure here in Athens, and it's a constant source of friction, not to mention the danger to our pedestrians. And so I think anything we can do to improve that will be a great benefit to both the campus and the community. And having just spent several days in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where things are really geared around pedestrians, I can say, I've rarely felt so safe walking out into the middle of the street. And I want, our residents, our students, to feel safe crossing the streets here. And this will be one way to make them safer.
Okay. Moving on. Franklin Avenue improvements. We need to amend 916. And I think, again, this is a moving around of the funds from different accounts. Or are we asking council to appropriate more? I don't think so. I think we're moving from one fund, 45,000 to State Highway Fund 225, to Wheel Tax Fund 226, which we heard earlier is a healthier fund, and 60,000 to CDBG Fund 248, and 93,000 to Street Rehab Fund. Am I correct?
Yes, and also to be in compliance with the auditor's office regarding the use of CDBG funds. To have a clear separation, since that portion of the funding from CDBG will go towards the infrastructure improvements, and the sidewalk assessments will come from the others, so that they can be recaptured and into that.
So for an
really
accounting,
put money back into a grant.
right? So for accounting purposes, just to make everything very clear. And this is a just to go back to what we discussed at the beginning, a CDBG grant, and these are monies for LMI neighborhood. And I think these were last year's monies, weren't they? That we're now using.
For the CDBG?
For Franklin, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So here's where we're using it this year. We're hoping to get funding for next year, but we are using last year's money in this project. Any questions on this?
And do you have any miscellaneous items from administration?
No miscellaneous items, administration?
Miscellaneous, no.
Okay. We'll move on to finance and personnel. Councilmember Reisner, please.
Thank you, Madam President. The first item I have on the agenda is the First Presbyterian lease agreement for parking lot. We'll discuss it in committee, and then we'll take it up in our special session later as 8216. The administration care to speak to it?
Just that this comes up, and it continues to increase in terms of what we end up, as the agreement plays out. In my time on council, if I'm not mistaken, it was started at $42,000, and this is a normal increase that we see, which...
Yeah, we're kind of held captive here since our law enforcement building needs parking that is on the church's property, as it were.
I seem to recall a time under a previous administration, a previous mayor, who's no longer in town, that the leases were allowed to expire and the police were parking on the street. Was that a working alternative?
It was not a functioning working alternative. So what I've been working with Attorney Malika, who represents the First Presbyterian Church. They have agreed to a 2% annual increase, which is less than previously, and also a removal. They have language, and you'll see this next week when it's attached to the ordinance in the agreement, that speaks to if we receive income that's greater than that, we would split it with them. Well, we just don't have enough parking spaces to receive enough income to exceed that, so that's being removed. And lastly, they're going to give due consideration to having an on-site meeting to look at the existing condition of the asphalt as opposed to demanding a resurfacing every 6 years or something. So I feel like they've moved, some for us, recognizing that. But yes, this is a 2% built-in increase.
And we're looking at, $46,591 for year one, $47,523 for year two, $48,473 for year three, all coming from the general fund, good old general fund 101, TC 300. So over 3 years, roughly $150,000. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Well, I believe we're...
I have one question.
Okay, go.
What were the other increases? You said we're at 2%. You negotiated a 2%.
The previous 3-year contract was at a 3%, and the previous 3-year contract, I was also asked to and did inquire about any interest in sale of the property as opposed to our continued leasing. There was none.
I can understand from the church's perspective, it's a revenue stream for them to upgrade their building or whatever they need. But it may be a larger conversation for the city of Athens at another time, whether we continue to lease the property. So we would be locking in for 3 years, though, if we approve this.
Yep.
Could you tell me how
Member
many...
McGee.
Thank you. Could you tell me how many police cars are kind of on reserve or active use at any one time? I'm just curious whether it's possible to have some of the cars parked in the parking garage and have some in a space where they could be immediately accessible.
You have your marked cruisers, and there are also unmarked vehicles.
Right.
And then we bring in the vans during high event weekends. But I would say that parking's pretty tight as it is already with what they have there. And I don't know that we'd want to lease right there in the same parking area where you have police sometimes rapidly entering their vehicles and responding. So.
Well, my question was really, it seems there are some parking spots right outside of the police station on the street, if those could be saved for the police cars themselves, so the officers might have to run a few more feet, but the real question is, do they need all of the cars in that particular lot at that particular time, or could some of the cars be in the city parking garage if they're just used for like day-to-day events?
There is one parking space directly in front of APD that is a
Right.
20-minute for police. That's to allow citizens who have to come in, maybe pay a ticket or what have you, they can pull in there. The first 5 parking spaces in the lot where the police department is, the upper lot as we call it, are still retained by use, exclusive use to the church. So they've already, those first 5 from College Inn are already designated for the church's use. So what may appear to have additional parking, I don't know that we do, but I can ask the police chief that question.
How many spaces do we get?
I knew somebody was going to answer that, and I don't have it in front of me. I would say there may be 32 lots in the...
I think Member McGee's question is more whether or not the vehicles that go in and out for, when they're called to go out, if there are more vehicles that are just sitting there that could be placed at the parking garage that are not used for, routine calls.
Again, I can talk with the police chief regarding that, but I can tell you that there was no interest, at least previously, from the church in terms of any real change to the existing agreement that they have in terms of continuing in a lease versus any other option. I'm not sure what I gain.
One of the things I will share with you too, and this came from Chief Pyle when I was asking a somewhat related question about police officers' vehicles or whatever to go in the parking garage. The experience has been in the past that cars, in particular police cars, can be vandalized inside the garage or keyed or marked or tagged or whatever, which is something that I'd not thought about before, but it's something he's certainly shared with me when it comes to putting police vehicles in the parking garage itself. May sound counterintuitive, but
Unless you had cameras right there. You would,
correct.
Yeah.
I can get the actual statistics to you in terms of how many vehicles are parked there and utilized. What I actually see is the opposite, that there's not even enough space sometimes for all the vehicles that police are using, but that's usually on high event weekends. You have to bring in a van, a couple vans. Because it's just a first reading this evening.
Right.
I'm not sure I have answers.
Anything else? Okay. Staffing. Last week we had a, excuse me, we looked at our non-union compensation plan 7116, and I see now that the emails need to make some changes. Do you care to speak to that?
Is there just the one?
Personnel director's here too.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pending retirement in the police DeForest. That would be a lieutenant. We've already had a civil service testing for that lieutenant's position, and we have a ranked list of eligible. We recently promoted a lieutenant. The request is to have a 6th lieutenant with a sunset clause of no later than December 31st in order to allow cross-training between the retiring lieutenant and the new lieutenant. And that's the change that we're requesting.
Forgive me for looking through my paperwork here.
So the Councilman.
President Nisley,
So
sorry.
the document we looked at last week contained a certain number of 5 lieutenants in the police and the staffing levels. So what we'd be doing by amending tonight is moving that from 5 positions to 6 positions with the sunset of 12/31/16.
This is not
And that's
unlike
the only change.
what has happened in the past, where so that we have overlap between someone who is retiring and someone who's coming into that position.
Okay. So what we'll do is, since we had a first reading last week, tonight technically, once we go into our special session, we would have a second reading. But if we make an amendment to 7116, that will put it back to a first reading. And to get it done by anytime soon, we'll have to suspend at some point at the next meeting or so, would you say?
Our clerk is nodding yes.
Yes.
No, okay. That's an affirmative, okay. Any other positions other than the lieutenant? Any other modifications to the package that was read last week? Like that? Okay. No? Okay. So we'll do that then. I knew it was just too much of a hope to get that thing through without a change. I just knew it. Well, what the hell? We've been working on it for 9 months. Something's going to happen. So.
This has the blessing of HR, is that correct? And
Sorry?
this has the blessing of HR?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Question? Appropriations. Anything?
Just modification to the Stimson mural. I don't know that it's an appropriation ordinance. I'm sorry, public art. Can you say public art?
Do we have?
Ordinance modification in there.
Right. And this is ordinance 8416, correct?
Correct. It's modifying
Under you.
0815.
Thank you. Yeah, I can speak briefly to this. Just
please do.
That's something that we've been discussing at the Municipal Arts Commission meetings. This ordinance has already been adopted. This would just simply add the Stimson mural space. So in years past, Stimson mural, which if you recall, I think it has a skateboarder on it and some, besides paint, there's also, I think, some mirror or
Glitter.
yeah, I can't think of the mosaic is the word I'm thinking of. And this had been funded or supported by both Rural Action and the 317 Board. Both those entities have been contacted by the city. They're willing and supportive of relinquishing control of the space. And so now the city has an opportunity to look at this as another potential place for public art. Mayor.
Yeah, this was, as you remember, 15,000 of this particular piece of legislation was to go towards the primary clarifiers down at the wastewater treatment plant, the large panels for painting public art on those. And this will allow for, as Member Butler mentioned, AMAC suggesting that the mural on Stimson Avenue and East State Street be repainted, have new art placed on a city wall. That's a piece of city property. to enhance that. So this allows for that. Otherwise, I mean, it has to come out of this for public art.
And I can add this as well, that our poet laureate is working with the administration to work on a mural for the wastewater treatment plant, with the theme being water, as well as some of her creative ideas. And then this would be a separate RFP that would go out, if that's my understanding.
So,
Councilmember.
being part of the tag team targeting area graffiti, it's wonderful to put up art. And I think that mural has been there for 20 years,
Yeah.
15, a long
15,
time.
20,
And it needs to be replaced. It's obviously met its useful life. When we as a city are spending funds, I find it really important that we properly finish off the product. When I frame art, I put on special glass so the painting doesn't fade or the artwork does not fade. And those of us that have worked on graffiti in this town, including some of the artwork that we as a city have paid for, we need to include there is some kind of special finishing product so that if it does get tagged or vandalized, we are able to remove that. And I know that in the tunnel project at Richland Avenue at the roundabout, that does not have that surface on there. That needs to be done. So in the implementation of something like this on the Simpson Avenue, we need to make sure that it is properly finished off for the city, but also for the artist and for everyone involved, because we have that issue in our town, and people do not always respect some of the artwork that has been placed. So I would just ask that we make sure that as a part of the cost, that this finishing product, whatever that is, be applied to the artwork once it's put up.
The challenge might be with mural space is that depending on the design, it may not necessarily be a painted mural. It might be a mosaic mural, but it might be more challenging to put that finish on. And I support what Councilmember Pappas is suggesting, that we want to protect our art and make it easier to clean up in the future. Just this evening on my way up, Jolena was applying the protective finish to her mural outside of Arts West this evening, so I was witness and privy to that. So I hear it, something that be of concern. Mayor.
I'm sure we could figure out something for protective coating on this. I mean, I look at it this way. You know, we've got several murals that are wide open in the public, unlike the tunnel and some other things that can get tagged because you're kind of undercover. But, you know, typically a piece of art isn't going to be tagged because you've already got a canvas that someone has created some art on. We could put some protective coating or figure that one out, but for the clarifiers, no. I don't think that's needed because it's behind a chain link fence with barbed wire fence around the top. And it's something that's staffed 24/7 to where there's people out there. So it's,
I'm fine with that.
Pardon me?
I'm saying in these more public spaces.
Sure.
Miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous?
You're going to talk about the appropriations for claims.
I was thinking they were going to bring it up. Okay, I have something on an email. It says $50,000 for raw water line and bypass line. Yes?
Yes.
Oh.
It's, Andy indicated he had requested this previously, but we didn't have the breakout. So he'd already previously, and you've appropriated $50,000 for water meters. The other $50,000 is the breakout between the Kimes bypass repair and what's the second component?
The well field raw water line rehabilitation.
So he's asking for those appropriations from his capital funding. So he has that money budgeted. He just needs it appropriated.
Okay.
Does that complete the Finance and Personnel Committee?
Unless there's something else.
All right, let's go
Okay.
home.
All right, the committee portion of our meeting will then adjourn at 8:20 p.m. And what we'll do is immediately move into special session. So thank you for your patience. I know some of you have been waiting in the audience. Our first item of business is to establish a quorum, and all members of council are present. We'll move into ordinances for third reading. And tonight you will hear some of these things that have been discussed in committee, facing grant application deadlines and some other time constraints. We will be suspending several of them. We'll be suspending 3 ordinances and 1 resolution tonight. And the first ordinance for third reading is Ordinance 5616, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 39, Wellhead Protection Plan, Sections 39.01.02, Definitions, 39.01.07, Management of Specific Potential Pollution Sources in the Wellhead Protection Area and Buffer Zone, and 39.01.08, Enforcement of the Wellhead Protection Plan. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 5616.
Second.
We've discussed this many times. It's our wellhead protection plan is a living document. This is updating it, especially concerning agricultural practices and definitions.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 5616. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 5716 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance and is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we adopt 5716.
Second.
As we've discussed in committee and our other readings, this is amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance, essentially getting a laptop for the treasurer, moving $150,000 to TIF fund, and then the auditor is authorized to make the following intra-fund transfer from the TIF fund 593, Street Rehabilitation Fund 572, $150,000. So.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 5716. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 5816 is an ordinance authorizing the disposal of a 2001 Ford Expedition by the Athens Fire Department. And this is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. Just quite simply, this is, as described, the vehicle is no longer needed for a municipal purpose, and it allows the City Service Safety Director to donate this to another governmental agency or a nonprofit. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 5816.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the disposal of this item owned by the fire department. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 5916 is an ordinance authorizing the 2016 Street Paving and Repairs Project, number 304, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 5916.
Second.
For those, just for memory purposes, we are basically appropriating $350,000 for this year's street fund rehab.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 5916. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We'll move on to Ordinance 6116, an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street between Washington and Carpenter on Saturday, June 25th from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 26, 2016, for the Boogie on the Bricks, a family music and arts festival. And this is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 6116.
Second.
I remind council, really the only differences in this year's Boogie on the Bricks is as to the location, which is from Washington to Carpenter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the closing of the streets for Boogie on the Bricks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. The next two ordinances will be for noise and vending on Boogie on the Bricks, same project. 6216 is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Section 13.04.10, unnecessary noise in the downtown area on Saturday, June 25th and until 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 26, 2016 for Boogie on the Bricks, a family music and arts festival, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 6216.
Second.
Okay. As explained, this will be for allowing for the noise that will happen during the Boogie on the Bricks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. And then our final one for Boogie on the Bricks is for vending, peddling, and soliciting. It's Ordinance 6316. This is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code, Chapter 11.04, vending, peddling, and soliciting, to allow vending in a designated area on Saturday, June 25th and until 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 26, 2016, during the Boogie on the Bricks Family Music and Arts Festival, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 6316.
Second.
I just want to remind the vendors out there that their permit would need to be into the code office by June 23rd at 2 p.m. to vend for that event.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 6316. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have ordinances for second reading. The first one being Ordinance 6416, an ordinance authorizing funds for the purchase of fire extinguishers through a Walmart community grant, introduced by Councilmember Butler. Ordinance 6516, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a lease agreement for solar-powered recycling refuse compacting containers in the uptown area, introduced by Councilmember Butler. Ordinance 6816, an ordinance to provide for an increase in the general city income tax of 0.20% per annum beginning January 1, 2017, authorizing the question of the increase to be placed on the ballot at the next general election to be held on November 8, 2016. And this is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Ordinance 6916 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Development Services Agency for a community development block grant program for program year 2016, and this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 7016 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance, and this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. That's the one we're amending. Yeah.
That's the one that needs to be.
And you're moving to amend that one? That's the,
I thought that was 7116.
okay. Okay.
You're right.
I'm right. Oh.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Ordinance 7216 is an ordinance amending certain sections of the...
No, we got to get back to
Oh,
7116.
I'm sorry, 7116, an ordinance authorizing a new non-union compensation plan and associated staffing levels, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
I make a motion to amend 7116.
Second.
The reason for the amendment is to make an increase on for a temporary appointment of a lieutenant, raise the number that is the current number in the attachment of the ordinance is at 5. This would increase it to 6. The temp appointment would go from 12/31 to 12/31/16. So that's the extension of the amendment to the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend Ordinance 7116. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. Now we'll move to 7216. This is an ordinance amending certain sections of the fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. We now have ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 7316, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 11, Business Regulations, to add Chapter 11.12, Reduction of Single-Use Bags, and this is introduced by Councilmember Cochran. And I know we may have some comments here tonight, so what we'll do is Councilmember Cochran will speak to it first. She will ask for comments from City Council members and then administration following that. And then if audience members want to speak to this issue tonight, you're each allowed 3 minutes, and we'll set a timer for you. So, Councilmember Cochran.
Thank you, President Nisley. And before I introduce the ordinance, I'd like to just frame it a little bit as to the history of where this ordinance has come from. As a member of the Athens Environment and Sustainability Commission, I took part in an initial planning meeting almost 2 years ago now at the community center as part of our sustainability planning process. We're in the stages of developing a sustainability plan for the City of Athens. And as such, at that meeting, single-use bags were identified as the top vote-getting issue that citizens wanted us to work on reducing. And so this is one potential outcome coming out of that meeting and out of our sustainability planning, having been addressed as an issue that many citizens in and around Athens are concerned about because of its impacts to the environment. So I'm going to begin by reading some of the whereases in this ordinance and explaining some of the aspects of the ordinance. And the ordinance, it will be available on the city's webpage for those wishing to see more detail. Whereas the City Council has a duty to protect the natural environment and the health of its citizens and visitors, and whereas the use of disposable single-use bags has a significant impact on the local environment, including contributing to litter on the streets, sidewalks, and public spaces, and polluting waterways, and whereas the use and disposal of paper and plastic disposable bags in the City of Athens and Athens County waste stream creates a burden on the City of Athens waste disposal resources and storm sewer system, clogged storm sewers, and whereas the use of disposal of single-use plastic bags into recycling and waste facilities can cause damage to equipment and wasted time repairing equipment or capturing these lightweight waste items. And whereas plastic single-use carry-out bags are not biodegradable, which means that these bags ultimately break down into smaller bits that contaminate soil and waterways and enter into the food chain that animals and marine life and ultimately humans ingest. And whereas the production of plastic bags worldwide requires the use of more than 12 million barrels of oil per year, which also has a significant environmental impact and results in the generation of greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas billions of plastic single-use carry-out bags are used in Ohio each year, and only a small percentage are recycled, approximately 5.2% according to the U.S. EPA. Whereas single-use carry-out bags provided by retail establishments impose unseen costs on consumers, local governments, the state, and taxpayers, and constitutes a public nuisance. And whereas the regulation of this chapter will reduce the use of single-use carry-out bags and encourage the use of reusable bags, which will maintain and enhance natural resources by reducing the environmental impacts of the manufacture and use of single-use bags. So the ordinance goes on to define what is a single-use bag and to outline stores that will and will not be affected by this. Some of the bags that will not be affected by this ordinance would include pharmacy bags. So when you're going to get your prescription filled at CVS or another local pharmacy or drugstore, that bag that you receive your bottle of or packet of pharmaceuticals in would not be subject to this. So bags that are used within the store before the point of purchase are exempt from this. So that would also include produce bags, the bags that you might put your broccoli in at Kroger's or other produce items. If you're going to the pet store, of course, you can still get your goldfish in a plastic bag. So Clearly, this is not going to make plastic bags go extinct. There will still be many bags. And when I began researching this issue and looking at ordinances in other cities, it became clear that there are many different measures through which cities and states have enacted legislation, running the gamut from outright bans to fees or taxes. And my thinking was that the citizens of Athens and the businesses of Athens would feel that it was less onerous to impose a full ban on single-use bags. And so that's the reason that I have approached the ordinance in this way, which is not an outright ban, but still involves the freedom to choose. So consumers may still choose at the register, or if they forget their reusable bag, they may purchase a bag at a proposed cost of 10 cents per bag. And so that cost is avoidable if consumers bring their own bags for reuse. Many stores also have other options available. I know at the bulk food depot, if you forget your bag, you can use a cardboard box. The same at Aldi's. Of course, the bulk food depot is not actually in the city, but that's one example of some of the proactive steps that some of our area businesses have taken. Other options will be available. Of course, businesses are welcome to offer incentives to customers if they so wish. That's something that's been offered in other cities in some of the retail establishments. So there are lots and lots of details within the ordinance. As I said, some bags are not going to be affected by this ordinance, including those pharmacy bags, bags that are legally required by the state for the bagging of alcoholic products, for example. And the stores would also be encouraged to provide reusable bags for purchase within the store at the point of purchase. So I am working also on developing a fact sheet that will further help to explain some of the local impacts to consumers and businesses of the proposed bag reduction ordinance. And many city council members I know have been fielding concerns and questions about the ordinance, and will continue to do so. The process of bringing an ordinance like this forward involves revisions and amendments sometimes. And so I would like to, before we move on to public comments, read a letter of support from the Athens Sustainability Commission. And this is based on some of the issues that have been seen on the impact to the environment. Let's see, I guess I'll have to go to the old paper copy here. So this is coming from the City of Athens Environment and Sustainability Commission. Dear Athens City Council members, we are writing to voice our support for the proposed ordinance restricting the free distribution of single-use carry-out bags in the City of Athens. This support is unanimous among members of this commission and was arrived at following substantial discussion over a period of several months. We support this measure for several reasons, including, based on current estimates, over 100 billion single-use bags are used in the U.S. every year, and only a small percent of these bags are recycled. The use of single-use carry-out bags by consumers at retail establishments is detrimental to the environment, public health, and welfare. Billions of single-use carry-out bags are used in Ohio each year, and only a small percentage are recycled. The average American family uses approximately 1,500 single-use bags each year. The manufacture and distribution of single-use carry-out bags requires utilization of natural resources and results in the generation of greenhouse gas emissions. Single-use carry-out bags provided by retail establishments impose unseen costs on consumers, local governments, the state, and taxpayers, and constitute a public nuisance. In addition to the economic benefits of restricting the distribution of single-use bags, there are countless environmental benefits. These include reduced use of natural resources for bag production, reduced wildlife fatalities from strangulation and suffocation, and improved water quality. For all intents and purposes, plastic never biodegrades. Instead, it slowly photodegrades. As it photodegrades, plastic film breaks into smaller pieces, which attract surrounding toxins. When mistaken as a food source, these plastic particles form a progressively greater health risk of food chain contamination. Plastic pollution is a global problem with local solutions. Reducing or eliminating the free distribution of bags is widely considered an appropriate and practical legislative action that can protect our environment and conserve resources. This approach has been enacted in other jurisdictions around the country. Thus, we strongly urge you to move forward with the single-use bag ordinance. It is a practical approach to addressing a profound problem. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Sincerely, the City of Athens Environment and Sustainability Commission. And with that, I'd like to open it up to comments and questions from other City Council members. Member Butler?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the work and effort that you and others have put into this. And I also appreciate that you're acknowledging we may go through some revisions or amendments or changes. If anything, I think the biggest aspect that I appreciate of this ordinance is that we've created a public dialogue to help educate people about waste in general. Whether I may or may not support this ordinance, we've done a job by at least educating people about what's going on in the community with waste and litter and recycling and plastic. So I applaud your efforts on that end. I just want to acknowledge, and I'm still gathering information regarding this particular issue and listening to community members and citizens, both in the community and via email. I acknowledge that there are some challenges in implementation, and we have received some data that is in opposition to the ordinance. We just received an email from the executive director of the American Progressive Bag Alliance, who states some opposing opinions to this, or acknowledges that some of these issues may be overblown. But again, that's an advocate in the business, so I get that. But again, I appreciate that we're just having the dialogue. Thank you.
Member Reisner?
I go along with Councilmember Butler in his views about the work and things that's going on with this with the ordinance. I consider myself a environmentalist, and I'm old enough to remember when there were no plastic bags, and I can remember when the first plastic bags came to Athens County, and people were really upset about them. They didn't like them very well. That's neither here nor there. My biggest concern is the burden it places on the city when it comes to your section 11.12.06, compliance and enforcement, designation of enforcement officers. Athens City Office of Code Enforcement is authorized to enforce this chapter. I know our code office right now is stretched pretty thin. One of their major operations is just simply inspection of apartments and things, and technically I believe it should be done on an annual basis, but because of just the sheer number of apartments that we have in rentals, it's more like 15 months, I believe, cycle right now. I know it's improving, it's getting better as we put more people and more emphasis on it. But my point is, if we now add to that, how's that going to affect their primary purpose? So I'd like to know hear something about that. I don't have any answer to it or anything. I'm just curious. So that's my statement. You're next.
Are we going down the line here?
Looks like it.
Might as well.
Again, I applaud you. This is a very difficult issue, Member Cochran. In Athens in general, we consider ourselves a pretty progressive place. A couple of my issues are in the section where the fee is, the consumer pays the fee. I've heard a lot of comments about that. There are many people already in Athens that bring their own bags, and what if you got an incentive, flip it? People are saying, what about a positive approach to this in terms of flip? And if you bring, you get some kind of, again, that becomes an enforcement and possibly an accounting issue, but it's a different way to frame the issue. So look at, and I assume others, maybe other communities, municipalities have done that, I'm not sure. But that was a comment that I've heard at least a dozen times. I've also heard the comment of a flat-out ban, which may be difficult for people, but I've heard all other people say, listen, I just traveled to, in fact, coming to council, I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they have a ban. And if you do the research, you start looking, and many places just have a flat-out ban for plastic. So I know Sustainability Commission talked about that some, but many people have said that to me. And I appreciated what Member Reisner just said about there was a day for many of us in this room where there was no plastic bag. And we went to the store and we figured it out, whether it was paper or whatever. I mean, that's how you went to the store in the old days, and you shopped. So it's not like this has not been done in the world in the past. The other issue I have is where if this was to pass and we had the fee, I do personally have some concerns with the amount of revenue that might be generated and all of that revenue going to a big box store or whatever. Maybe with the smaller businesses, maybe there's some way it could go to a pool and everyone could be helped. I don't know, because the big box stores potentially, there would be quite a lot of money that's made off of this. And I have not a bit of a concern, I have a large concern about that. And yes, they would be buying bags for people, and yes, they would be educating, but I do have a significant concern with that, because it seems like an income generator when someone is being forced to pay a fee for something. So I do have a concern with that. So I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that revisions and possible amendments, and that we are going to continue to talk about this, and there may be more community conversation about that. I think we need to do this. I think, again, Athens is the kind of community we can find the information. We can find out how other municipalities are dealing with the enforcement aspects. I will mention today that an elderly gentleman called me and he said, how can we enforce this when we can't enforce people riding bikes and almost knocking me off the sidewalk, which we have all these signs posted that talk about motorized or wheeled vehicles on sidewalks. And I agreed with him. I know that we can't always enforce everything that we do to the amount that we want to enforce it. So there are still issues that need to be resolved, in my mind.
I want to voice my appreciation that you've worked with businesses, because I know that you have talked with businesses in Athens, so it's not like how some in the editorials and stuff that this has been done in a complete vacuum. City Council tries to definitely do their homework, and I appreciate that. I think that when you do your fact sheet, I think one of the problems is that this sort of stuff gets out and people call it a fee, a tax. It's the coming of, the socialist Russia to we're going to die from plastic poisoning. And it's been out there for however long. So there's a lot of miscommunication that has been done, which is not necessarily the best thing that happens when trying to make policy that's efficient and does what we want it to do. So I think that between what I've talked to people about is identifying and making sure people understand which businesses are affected. Not all businesses in Athens. You do have certain cutoffs. I think that there's the issues with the larger stores does look like they're getting a windfall from it, like what Michelle was talking about, and exactly the types of administrative duties that would be required of the city. And I think we need to break those out, make sure that everybody understands those. And if I think those are the key parts that people are most concerned about, and if those are the things we have to amend, then we need to do it in a communicative, open process. So thank you for taking this on. I know it's like slings and arrows.
Yes, thank you. So I think my biggest question, just reading through the different bags and the different businesses, is really how many businesses are going to be affected by this. I mean, and is that's probably just sitting down and just doing the math, but there's not as many businesses as there are rentals. So for me, I don't see the enforcement. Now, of course, our enforcement code officer could probably enlighten me more, but I don't see this as much as looking at our rentals on an annual basis being as much of a headache. But I'd be curious to know exactly how, having a breakdown of those businesses and knowing who falls into what category and why. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for all the hard work you've put into this. I always like a real interesting topic like this, and it has got the community quite upset in many ways. I keep sitting here wondering whether it would be possible to have our new recyclable carts and just haul them to the grocery stores and fill them up with our groceries, since we're getting these at such a bargain. I say that flippantly, and I say it simply because we go through this process of trying to find so many ways to change things and save the world in our own ways, and anyone who does any kind of recycling is aware that it's a personal thing. You feel good after doing it. I took 2 huge paper bags full of recyclable plastic bags to Kroger's yesterday and just kept stuffing them in there, and I realized how many plastic bags I used through the course of my shopping. And it was shocking. It was truly shocking. And I think the real issue is something that you've put your finger on, which is that we really need to change things. We do as a people. We need to change things. But I'm not sold yet that this is the right way to do it. I have some concerns. I have some concerns about enforcement. I have some concerns about some of the exemptions even. If we're encouraging people to use alternative bags, let's give them the alternative bags. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than a $200,000 recyclable carts for everybody. So if I had my way, I would have an ordinance saying that everybody in Athens gets a free reusable bag. So that's what I would like to see. But I applaud you for bringing this to the attention of the public. My feeling is that my mind is still open on this. Thank you.
Comments from the administration?
Thank you. Let me just start by saying, from an environmental standpoint, I certainly appreciate what you're attempting to do with this particular piece of legislation. However, I am going to say that what is being created here is a law. It's a law. It's a law that comes with some interesting consequences. That being the first fine if someone is found to be in infraction of something that I'm not sure I have my head wrapped around what that is. Is it that you've given away one plastic bag without changing a dime? Is it repeated? There's no guidance on how this is going to work when it comes to that. But we're talking a civil fine, which to challenge that, you're going to have to go and accept a minor misdemeanor, which is a recordable offense. Now you have a record. If you do it again, it becomes a fourth-degree misdemeanor, which is an arrestable offense. So that I see as being a big issue in and of itself in terms of the way this is kind of being played out as I'm reading it in terms of the subsequent violations and the violations. The other thing is, as I've mentioned before, is accountancy. The accountancy of looking to see whether any said retailer is collecting that dime for every single bag. So do I send my code office out there to start auditing books, which is an auditor's job, by the way, not so much a code enforcement officer's job, but do they go out and go, okay, what did you start with this month? 10,000 bags? Well, I need to see $100,000 in the bank because if you've been collecting a dime, at what level do we sit there and start combing through store books in terms of the bags itself? I'm concerned with the impact that it's going to have just at the checkout. And in particular, one that you and I had this conversation earlier, Member Cochran, is at one of our retailers that has a self-checkout where it has one attendant that's standing there looking to see what problems someone may have because you accidentally set something in the bagging area and you didn't check it, run it through the scanner yet. But now, who is doing the accountancy of plastic bags at something like that is a self-checkout? I'm a big fan of the honor system, but I'm also a realist that people would sit there and just not do it. Now, what's going to happen is accountancy through that one element alone. What is my code office going to do when they identify that there was hundreds of bags, that there's no records of the amount of money that came in from those bags that clearly are not there to what you started with? Accountancy is a real big issue with this piece of legislation because you're asking a consumer to pay a dime for these bags, but more importantly, now you're asking the retailers to account for all those dimes. This also affects farmers market. Farmers market is going to have to sit there and be tracking this one extra piece of legislation to where I've got to set aside a dime for every one of their transactions that may include bags as well. My conversations with farmers market, which I give huge praise to our farmers market as well. We just won't have plastic bags, okay. So maybe in that way, where this conversation has gone has stimulated someone to go in a different direction. But the last element that I want to throw out is that it's two-part. We have a major university, as we all know. And so, number one, it's at what level are we re-educating the incoming class as to this ordinance? Otherwise, a lot of students, and likely when my 4-year-olds grow up to go to college, they're going to, unfortunately, I'm going to give them a credit card and say, okay, here's what you're doing, all you're purchasing with, that they don't even see that extra dime. And so we're talking 23,000 students. How big of an impact, and how can we detect the impact in terms of bags not being purchased from the student body versus residents in Athens, which might be easier to track in one way or another, but with the incoming class, they won't even recognize that dime, possibly that dime going in and out and what it's paying for. They're just going to get the plastic bags. I'm not isolating that out to students, anybody in the room. It can be anybody, but we have a hard enough time keeping people from left in, left out of Bobcat Lane, which is a big problem, and that's something that with all the citations in the world, that hasn't changed. It's still happening. The last thing is that in the uptown area in particular, It is probably, if not it's one of the most tourist attractive areas in the city of Athens, aside from probably Farmers Market and Sells Park and some other places, but a lot of family, friends, whatever, come into the uptown area. Those are going to be impacted businesses to where they won't be able to use plastic bags either. And I could see that playing out poorly to where someone who's there to visit, from out of town, from out of state, from out of the country, who knows where, are going to come in and sit there and want to buy some tchotchkes, or they want to buy a shirt or a T-shirt or whatever, some OU memorabilia. And now, if they didn't come with their own reusable bag, which they're likely not going to, again, as a realist, they're not going to come to the city of Athens with some packed in your suitcase. But it's going to affect uptown businesses in ways that may have been intended, may not have been intended. But I could see people coming to Athens and just deciding, I got to pay 10 cents for a bag. Well, I just don't need to take that. I'm also a little bit concerned with someone who's not going to pay and they don't have their reusable bag, and they're going to sit there and start shoving produce and stuff in their pockets and walking out. And now all of a sudden the store security is going to sit there and go, wait a minute, what's that in your pocket that you're walking off with? Did you pay that? I'm being a little bit facetious, but there's a lot of interesting ways in which this whole piece of legislation will play out. But I'll get off my soapbox in a second. But the main things is how this is going to significantly impact my code, our code, the code office. We've got, I don't know, Rick Suarez came. I don't know if you want to speak at all to your department in terms of your people power down there, but having to deviate from inspecting houses, rental units. We're in grass cutting season, inspecting that. In the winter months, we're inspecting snow. And having to do that. So it's not just inspecting rental units, it's everything else that the code office is already stretched to the brink in terms of being able to attend to, and now they're going to have to parse their attention even further to go through and be the accountant watchdogs over not just our big box stores, convenience stores. They'll be having to go and look at anybody who's using single-use plastic bags. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'd like to speak.
Okay. Evening, Council, Mayor.
Can you be sure to introduce yourself before you?
Yes. Rick Suarez, Code Director for City of Athens. Good evening, Council. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak with you. Obviously, I need to work on educating council a little bit on what the staff does, the code office does. Some of my concerns are, in as much as the ordinance has merit and scope and intent and purpose, as the mayor mentioned, the office is stretched. We have 4 code officers, and we do approximately 5,800 rentals. Supposed to do it a year, and we are going out to 2 years now. That is not good for the student or the landlords, because now we are having to extend that very important inspection, which involves safety issues, way further out, and we keep moving out and out because we cannot keep up with these numbers. Just do the simple math. 4 code officers, 5,800 rentals. That detracts from all the other things that we're supposed to be responsible for. Answering complaints from tall grass to signage to dog waste to cat waste. We are responsible for that. Humor and I say we're the poop patrol, but we're responsible for that. These are all things that we have to do. Now, what I question on this ordinance is that the violation part of this chapter, any part of this chapter is a violation. So now do I go undercover? Well, that's not our job, to go undercover to inspect things. Do we ask about training records? We asked if the cashier was trained. We asked to see their books. For example, Walmart or Kroger's. Well, I like both stores. Now I'm going to have to go undercover and inspect them. What I have a problem with is you're looking at tens of thousands of transactions to look at. You may have a smaller store that may have a couple hundred. Now you got to match the sale receipts up, the inventory. I've worked in retail. I know how all this works. And I've worked in inventory and warehousing. It's a lot of work. It's not just a 1 hour deal. This would be at least 3 or 4 days worth of work to just do an inspection. That will take away from our apartment inspections. I just do not have the staff to meet the current requirements that are required by the code. Now, I've only been here 3 months, and I'll have you know that I'm an acute observationist of how management and support operations work. And I'm in the decline. This office is in the decline of doing their job properly. And this is just another added thing to the office. I'll take questions if you have any questions. All right, thank you.
I know there's some folks in the audience who want to speak on this issue, and we have a representative from Zero Waste. I'm going to start with them because I know that we have a letter of support from Zero Waste, and then we'll get to everybody else as well.
Good evening. My name is Erin Sykes, and I'm the director of the Zero Waste Program at Rural Action. Good to see everybody again. With one addition, Rural Action is in support of the single-use bag ordinance. And I'll first speak to 3 reasons that we're in support, and then I'm going to talk briefly about what we'd like to see added. First, we feel that the plastic bag ordinance is in line with the goals of the Athens Hawking Zero Waste Action Plan, with which both City Council and the City of Athens officially support. The plan does state that entities will operate with a zero waste philosophy, and that philosophy prioritizes waste reduction and then reuse and recycling and composting. So a fee has actually been shown to reduce plastic and paper that people consume by 50 to 95%, and eliminating waste is environmentally preferable to recycling. Second, we do believe that the ordinance was written in the best interest of the citizens. In other communities, single-use bags have hidden costs of $18 to $30 a year, hidden in taxes and retail prices. This is more money than it would cost us to purchase bags to line our trash bags for a year. Even if the fee in Athens didn't result in those same savings, this ordinance has something in place so that bags will not become a barrier to food access. Those receiving governmental assistance would be able to get bags at no cost. Third, we believe that the ordinance will not be a financial burden to businesses and may even save them money. This is because the ordinance was written for the business to be able to keep the fee. And so in other cities that have done this, they've come out even, or in Washington, D.C., about 50% of businesses have actually saved money as a result of the ban. So you know why we are in support. We believe it's good for the planet. We believe it's in the best interest of the people, and we believe it's not going to hurt our local businesses' bottom line. What do we think needs some tweaking? We would really like to see a plan in place for how local businesses will be supported to adopt the single-use bag fee. We think they need a place to call for help. They need some guidance on reporting, template for consumer education, and they may identify other needs themselves if we ask. Rural Action is committed to help with that, but we certainly can't do it alone, and so there needs to be structures in place at the city that would support that. So with this, I will close by saying I hope that the City of Athens will adopt the single-use bag fee. We could be the first in the state to do so, and just as we were the first in the state to launch curbside recycling in the 1980s. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sykes. And would you also sign the roster in the front? All of our guests who are speaking today will need to sign to indicate who is speaking today. And now, Mr. Alasif.
Abe Alsop on Westfield Place. I'd like to start off by sarcastically saying thank you for a choice. You're giving us a choice that you should have no say in whatsoever. It's strictly a business transaction. If I choose to do business with, say, Aldi's because I have to pay for bags, I can, as a consumer, make that choice. But as a bureaucrat, you do not have a right to tell us what we can and cannot do in a transaction. Just like you're a masseuse in your daytime, the government doesn't have the right to tell you how to rub someone's aching back, as they shouldn't. So, along with some actual experience, I was a bagger at Siemens for a year and a half when I was in high school and college. And I see daily, when I was bagging, the stuff that would come through, the people who couldn't afford it, the very poor. I myself grew up very poor. And we would go shopping once, maybe twice a month, where we'd throw all the kids in the car and go and use 30-some-odd bags. And my parents weren't on welfare, so we wouldn't be exempt under this. So then, therefore, you're putting a tax on people outside the county, though they come outside in the county, probably some even here in the city that live on the First Ward, that would be going and spending large amounts of money just for bags that they may not even be on welfare, but they are crunching the numbers every day to see how things will work. And it's what this fundamentally goes down to is this is a choice. As Councilman McGee said, it's a choice. If you want to be proactive and be environmentally smart, which I encourage all to do, you have that choice. But basically what you're doing is saying that I'm smarter than you, and then therefore I will make sure that you have a choice, but you have to pay 10 cents. But thank you for, once again, not choosing to do a ban, because Athenians were too stupid to make that decision. So in closing, I would just like to say, if you should proceed forward with this in any way, shape, or form, I don't know if I'll be successful or not, but I will work within every parameter of the law to undermine you and make sure you do not serve another term.
Thank you. Next. Come on up.
I'm going to make one comment before you begin. And Mr. Alasaf, this is directed towards you. Our comments tonight are imposed to be balanced and educational, and they're not meant to be threatening. So if somebody has information to offer, if they have facts to offer, if you have a personal process that you want to follow in your election campaign, you can do that when you go to run for office, but you're not to use this forum. I'm sorry, that is out of line. And you saved it to the very last sentence. So I'm directing this as a comment for the rest of this discussion. This is tonight, this is the second reading, and this is the third reading. I am highly offended, as all the other council members I think would be too. And I just needed to get that out, and
thank you, Member.
I will thank you for waiting.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Stout. I'm one of the managing partners of College Bookstore on Court Street. I've been a retailer in Uptown Athens for 27 years. I told the author of this ordinance when I emailed her that one of the coolest things about living in a small town is the relative ease with which you can address your local government. So this is really cool, and thank you for listening to me on this. I thought I'd share a retailer's perspective because I don't know how much retailer's perspective you have. A really big concern for me as a retailer is the public's perception that this is some kind of a windfall for the retailers. Retailers, I can only speak for myself, we don't want to charge our customers for bags, not because we're anti-environment, but because the culture has built certain understandings of what are complimentary and what are charged for. And we feel like if we're forced to go against a cultural norm, being the only city in the state that would enact this, that would put us at a competitive disadvantage. And that we would become the villains as the retailers. We will become the enforcers. We go through X number of bags a year. We would probably generate a couple of $3,000 worth of revenue in a year as this goes. And I feel unequivocally that we stand to lose far more money than that in lost sales and aggravation to customers than we stand to gain. But the public's perception, all you have to do is read the Athens News. The perception is that the retailers are going, this is just money for the retailers. That's one of our big objections to this, because I don't think the city wants to call it a tax. I don't know why they don't want it to be a tax, but they don't. It's a fee, but I'm a retailer 27 years. I don't know what a fee is. I don't know how I collect a fee. And as far as I know, if I charge a customer 10 cents for a bag, I'm selling them a bag for 10 cents. And if I'm doing that, that's taxable. So it's not 10 cents, it's 11 cents. I called the State of Ohio Tax Office about that question, and they said that there's no ordinance in the state, so they don't know, and they would have to come down with a ruling if and when Athens passes this. But until they would do that, it's taxable. That's what I was told by the State of Ohio Tax Office. So it's not 10 cents, it's 11 cents. We have some concerns. I'm going to throw them out to you. Not a lot of it has to do, it's mostly about logistics. It seems to me that the approach has sort of been, hey, we want this fee, hey, retailers, you figure it out. I asked the author, how do we document this? How is it going to be audited? What are we going to be responsible for? Wow.
Why don't you go ahead and take a moment to just close?
Well, I would implore the members of council to ask retailers what the impact. Don't assume that you know what the retailer's impact will be. Ask them. I haven't been allowed to have any discussion with anybody about it. None of this is personal. It's business. So let's talk about business. Let's get my perspective on it. Invite me to a committee meeting or something, or any one of the other local merchants. Please don't just pass this without a plan. And a final thought, anytime you have a situation where you're collecting revenue with really no plan for documentation or enforcement, man, that is a recipe for trouble. That's a recipe for trouble. Hurt feelings, graft, who knows what. Man, thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak. I greatly appreciate that, and I greatly appreciate the author's willingness to send me information. I could go point by point. It would take all night. Thank you very much.
And you want to sign in?
I did.
You did?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Eric Lee. I've emailed all the council, I think, with some of my concerns. Some additional concerns, if our point is to help the environment, why not also give the choice to the retailers and say, you can charge 10 cents a bag, or you can use 100% post-consumer recycled bags, or you can use 100% biodegradable bags, and give them a choice too. And then also give them enough period of time where if they're a retailer who's bought bags 2 or 3 years in the future, give them a 3-year window where they can figure this out and figure out how to implement it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Looks like that's it for tonight. Thank you all for your comments, and as I said, dialogue does continue on this issue. I will work on coming up with some amendments to the ordinance, particularly the implementation enforcement pieces, using a lot of the input that we've had here tonight and through the conversations that I will continue to have with the administration and continued conversations with the retailers. We don't want this to be negatively impactful to anyone in the city, and certainly as Ms. Sykes pointed out, we're doing this with the best of intentions, and so it is with that intention that I do want to have an ordinance that is strong and meaningful for everyone and not overburdensome for anyone. So thank you all for your input tonight.
Okay, we'll move on to Ordinance 7416. This is another one that's a first reading. It's an ordinance granting variances from the Athens City subdivision regulations for property located at 329 East State Street and 11 Hudson Avenue, Lot 660, owned by J. Randall Wheaton, to allow a lot split. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We discussed this earlier. It was put forward by the Planning Commission with 2 variances for setback. Normally, setback's a little greater than the variance will allow. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Ordinance 7516 is an ordinance granting a revocable license to John Moeller, Time Warner Cable, for the placement of power supply cabinets on the city right-of-way. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We discussed this earlier. We'll read it for first reading tonight with the knowledge that the administration is going to get together with the law director to look at what the ORC requires of this type of right-of-way granting, and whether, as Councilmember Reisner would like to know, whether we can charge for it. So we'll have more information on that.
Okay. Ordinance 7616 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA federal local let project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for improvements to US 33 and East State Street, which is project number 288, and declaring an emergency. And we have a minor correction on this. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to suspend 7616.
Second.
And the reason for the suspension is we're waiting to move this forward, and I think that we're working with some deadlines here to work with ODOT and getting it moved forward.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend. The reason for suspending, to be able to move forward with Ohio Department of Transportation on this project. All those in favor of suspension signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 7616.
Second.
For the reasons I stated previously. And again, this is to move forward with the planning stages for the US 33 State Street interchange and improvement there on the traffic flow.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 7616. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Ordinance 7716 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 816, authorizing engineering services for the East State Street US 33 project number 288, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to suspend 7716.
Second.
And again, this goes in line with what we just passed, and it's the movement of the funds, same funds, but movement of the funds into different pools of money.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for Ordinance 7716. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 7716.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of Ordinance 7716. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries. Ordinance 7816 is an ordinance authorizing design and preliminary engineering of the McKinley Avenue Extension Project, which is number 302, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to suspend 7816.
Second.
And the reasons for this is that we need to enter into the preliminary engineering because we want this project to move forward in 2017, and we know how long these projects take. So we'd like to move, our Public Works and Administration would like to move forward.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to suspend 7816. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Pappy.
Move to adopt 7816.
Second.
for the reasons that I just previously mentioned.
Motion and a second for approval of ordinance 7816. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 7916 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application and enter into an agreement with ODOT for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant for the Northwest Athens Bikeway Spur Phase 3, project number 296, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to suspend 7916.
Second.
As we talked about in committee, we need to move forward. We have the letter of intent, and we'd like to move forward with putting the grant forward.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules so that we can submit the grant application. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ordinance has been suspended. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Pappy.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of this ordinance so that we can enter into the Northwest Bikeway Spur Phase 3 project and apply for a grant application to help pay for the funds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 8016 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit an application and enter into an agreement with ODOT for a Transportation Alternatives Grant program for the Richland pedestrian improvements and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to suspend 8016.
Second.
I realize, Council, that we just went through a whole series of suspensions, but this isn't a new idea, and we do have the letter of intent from ODOT that is suggesting we apply for the grant. So we have heard about the Richland Avenue issue for quite some time, so I feel confident in moving forward with the suspension. And again, all we are doing is authorizing that we apply for the grant.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for 8016. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Pappy.
I move to adopt 8016
Second.
Okay.
for the reasons that I just mentioned.
And this is for the city to apply to the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program for Richland pedestrian improvements. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Ordinance 8116 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 0916, authorizing improvements on Franklin Avenue, project number 301, and this is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
We discussed this 8116 earlier, and really all we're doing here is moving around the funds into different lines, and also for accounting purposes, because of the CDBG fund, making it clear for accounting. But I am not asking for suspension.
Thank God.
Okay, Ordinance 8216 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute a lease with the First Presbyterian Church of Athens, Incorporated, of Athens, Ohio, for the rental of in-lots 15 and 17 in the city of Athens. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. As we discussed about an hour ago with the administration, every 3 years or so we have to renew our lease with the First Presbyterian Church so that our police department and other emergency vehicles has a place to park. So we're reading this for the first time.
Okay. Ordinance 8316 is an ordinance amending the 2016 appropriation ordinance and is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. We discussed this evening as well during committee. The mayor's office was able to update us on this particular project, $50,000 from Water Fund to tackle the hospital well field raw water line rehabilitation and the Kimes Reservoir bypass line construction. That's the meat of this ordinance. Thank you.
And are we in need of suspending this one? I hate to say it, but
We do, unless we have another special session this month.
okay.
I'm sorry.
We need to suspend.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I'm sorry you weren't aware.
No,
of
thank you,
that.
President Isley. Having heard the updated news there, the need to suspend, I would like to make a motion to suspend ordinance 8316.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for ordinance 8316. The reason being that we have some expenses for this that need to occur immediately. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to now make a motion to adopt ordinance 8316.
Second. Okay.
And we have
as previously described.
Thank you.
We now have a motion and a second for approval of ordinance 8316. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance has been approved. Ordinance 8416 is an ordinance amending ordinance 0815 to include the redesign of the Stimson mural, and this is introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. Again, we discussed this earlier this evening. Just quite simply, this allows the Stimson mural redesign to be thrown in with the $15,000 for the wastewater treatment plant clarifier mural project. I don't believe there's a need to pass this evening, so we have time. Thank you.
Okay. We'll now move on to a resolution for second reading. As I understand, this does need to be suspended tonight, Councilmember Pappy. This is Resolution 0816, a resolution declaring it necessary to replace existing sidewalks deemed in poor condition as part of the Franklin Avenue Infrastructure Improvement Project, number 301, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. Administration, can you just clarify for us the need for suspension on this resolution for the sidewalks on Franklin?
I imagine our time constraint is that we have to serve certified letters, and the process needs to be in place before this goes on the taxes in September, and that means we have to file in August, and we're on break in July. So
thank you,
I think
Member
that's
Nicely,
the
for reminding
time
me.
limit.
I was told about this. It's been a long evening. Yes, and so that is why we need to suspend it tonight, so that we, everyone is notified in a timely manner, and it also, as you mentioned, it's the tax rolls.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to suspend the rules for Resolution 0816. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended, Councilmember Pappy.
So I just remind council, this is the resolution to replace the sidewalks on Franklin Avenue as part of the Infrastructure Improvements Project 301. The total project is presently estimated at $223,237. And the construction of the sidewalks is a portion of such cost presently estimated $92,000 and some change for the sidewalks.
Okay. And we do have a question from a member in the audience. Mr. Lee, if you want to address the audience, please.
Hi, I'm probably kind of shooting myself in the foot here because I have a rental property on Franklin that has a section of sidewalk that needs to be repaired, which I'm going to fix. But I think from the last council meeting, there was a discrepancy between the amount that you guys would bill the owners and what it would actually cost the city. And I would say put that all on the owners.
Okay.
I don't know that I understood the comment, but
I believe last council meeting,
Yes.
the money set aside to repair the sidewalks was
Right.
greater than the funds that you would collect from the owners of those sidewalks. There was, I think, a several $1,000 discrepancy.
Maybe we can get a clarification from Paula Horan Mosley, our Service Safety Director.
I'll try. What what some of the modifications you did tonight were to move the money from the fund so that the assessment doesn't come out of the CDBG money, and it does come out of the street. Some other things you probably heard. You should have received a letter. Have you received that letter? That gives you a lead time. So you have the opportunity to go ahead and price it out yourself to see about repair versus allowing the city, even though we do get a pretty good bid prices in.
And I've actually repaired one of the two small sections that need to be repaired, and I'm getting a quote for the others.
So the only thing it says to the owner is the actual cost.
But my concern is not that I have to repair the sidewalk. My concern isn't you are not fully billing the owners for the repair.
He noticed a price discrepancy between what the owners were going to be billed and what the total cost was going to be to the city. Now, part of that may be some portions of curb, which sometimes happen in the projects, and so the city assumes on certain ones of those, that's a city expense, and so that's why they wouldn't exactly. It may be that's why they wouldn't exactly meet. But we
Also
appreciate
corners.
the comment,
Also
right?
corners.
And we can, and for accessibility. But we appreciate the comments and thanks for noticing, and we'll double check it before we proceed. So, okay. We have a motion. We have suspended the rules, and that was voted on. And we now have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 0816. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion carries, and the ordinance has been approved. And just moments before we move into the motion for adjournment, we do have a public meeting, and I'm going to take a little bit of liberty to announce it because if we wait till next week, the public meeting will be over. And that's for the West Union pedestrian area. There is a public meeting tomorrow afternoon from 3:30 to 5, and we're encouraging public members, business owners in the vicinity to please come. There will be a brief presentation, as I understand from the PSA announcement that went out at 3:30. And is that correct?
3:30 to 5:30. It will be in Bromley Hall in the ROTC department, which is the north side door to come into Bromley Hall. So doesn't face South Congress, nor does it face West Union. It's on the uphill side, the north door to come into the ROTC department. It is a stakeholders meeting addressing the West Union design concepts. It'll be pretty much moderated by DDT Architecture. We'll be sitting there and have several charrettes to engage with whoever comes to this event. So, Member Nisley, or President Nisley, I'm glad that you brought that up because it is time sensitive. It will be, for this first round, will be tomorrow, like I said, 3:30 to 5:30, Bromley Hall, ROTC department.
It's well marked.
It is well marked. I believe that we were also encouraging BDT Architecture to put signs, or we may even have some that we put out, movable signs that would just to inform people where to come in for this event.
And we have one other item that the Clerk of Council has reminded us that we will be having a special session. It will not be on Monday, the 30th, but it will be on Tuesday, the 31st. And do we have an indication, are all council members able to attend on Tuesday, the 31st, special session?
At 7?
At 7 o'clock. Okay. Thank you. And that being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. We'll have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Well, yeah, you want to.
Motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:39 p.m. Thank you very much.